Hello, I'm Annie from Counselling4Yeovil, and we've been doing a series on anxiety. We've had an introduction to anxiety, and then we are looking at spelling out the word peaceful. So the different letters of the word peaceful are different things which can help you with your anxiety. So we've got P for permit, permit all your feelings. E for engage, engage in your own recovery. A for activate, that is, activate the amygdala, the part of the instinctive part of the brain that makes connections, and we're going to activate different connections by having new experiences to replace the old negative experiences. We've got C for change, change your thinking. So now we're using the frontal cortex, the rational thinking part of your brain, and changing our thinking patterns and practicing new thinking patterns. So that's as far as we've got. If you haven't seen those ones, then do please feel free to pause this and go back and look at them. But you don't have to. This stands on its own as well. We're on E next, and this E is for enjoy. Enjoy the moment. Now, you've probably heard about mindfulness, and mindfulness, I think, is a very useful technique with anxiety. So it comes from a Buddhist tradition, and it's very popular, has been very popular recently. Actually, mindfulness, or the sanctity of the present moment, is very much in our Western Christian tradition as well, in our culture. And so the 300-year-old classic spiritual guide and enlightened text of Jean-Pierre de Caussade talks about the sacrament of the present moment, and that's about not letting our mind spend its time musing about future problems or futile regret for things which happened in the past, but being in this moment and in the littleness, in the ordinariness of this moment, and finding God in this moment, finding peace in this moment, getting centered and grounded. So it's in our Western tradition as well as the perhaps better known at the moment Eastern traditions. So enjoying the moment, being in the moment. We can use things to help us to do that. So nature, a lot of people find when they're out in nature, they can have peaceful time just contemplating nature. Perhaps a beautiful piece of music can take us to a place where we let ourselves just be in that moment at that time. Journaling, some people find journaling and noticing and writing down the special little things in life can help, like a gratitude journal, something like that. We can be in the present moment, even at the saddest times of our lives, and enjoy the present moment, even at the saddest times in our lives. You may have experienced, as I have, times of grief when somebody close to you has died, and you've been immensely sad, and that's very natural. And you miss that person, and you wish they were still with you. Sometimes at funerals or at those times, you get moments that are joyous. You get moments when something funny happens and everybody laughs. You get moments when something uplifting happens and everyone enjoys it. You get moments when two people see each other at a funeral who haven't seen each other for ages, and there's joy in the meeting, even though the moment is sad. Unfortunately, sometimes we feel guilty when we feel those moments and we don't let ourselves enjoy them. But I like to think that most of our nearest and dearest who have passed on wouldn't want us to not enjoy those moments. If they love us, they would want us to have those moments. So let's not waste them feeling guilty. If you get a moment when you can laugh, when you can sing, when you can play, enjoy it. That moment is the only moment that you need to live. Each of us only needs to live the moment that we're in now. So let's make the most of it. If you're feeling particularly anxious, a good question to ask yourself is, will this matter in a year's time? This is another way of staying in the moment when we're anxious. Some things will. Some things will matter in a year's time. Almost all of the things we worry about won't matter in a year's time. If I just missed the bus and I was sure the driver saw me running, but he drove off anyway, and now I'm going to be late for something, is that going to matter in a year's time? If someone made a disrespectful comment to me and just after they'd walked away, I thought of a brilliant comeback, but it was too late. Is that going to matter in a year's time? I'll have forgotten it. It won't matter. So it's not worth spending our energies worrying about it. It's a good question to ask yourself. When you feel completely overwhelmed with anxiety and life just feels too much, in the present moment, you've only got to cope with one step at a time. So a good thing to do is to say, I'll just do this step that's in front of me today. I'm not going to worry about all the rest of it, but I'll take the first step. When I've taken the first step, I'll take the next step. When I've taken the next step, I'll just keep doing that. I'll just take one step at a time. If one step is too big, break it down into smaller steps and I'll take a smaller step. If even the small steps are too big, instead of going, I can't do this, I'm going to think, what do I need to help me do this? What support do I need? And in breaking it down and just staying in the present, not worrying about the whole picture, we can do a lot more. If you have a faith, I think it really helps. If you believe in something bigger than you, if you believe in God or a higher power, being able to pass your anxiety up to a higher power that you believe and trust in, for me personally, that's made more difference than all the clever anxiety techniques out there. Believing and trusting in a loving Heavenly Father who is alongside me, holding my hand as I go through things, and not saving me from going through things, but being there with me. I used to have a lovely bookmark with all the different facial expressions of emotions that we go through, and down the side it said, "You never leave me, Lord, however I feel." I can be sad, angry, frightened, happy, silly, and He doesn't change. He's there with me. So that's my personal experience. It might not be yours. That's okay. Your experience might be different. But for me, I would highly recommend it because that's made more difference than anything else to me and my anxiety. I want to, just before we move on to the next, to F, excuse me, I want to talk about breathing. There's a way of breathing. You may have noticed the sweat top. There's a way of breathing that can really help with your anxiety, and it's actually the quickest way to help someone who's having a panic attack is to slow down your breathing. So you're breathing in and you're breathing out. And to start with, it's quite shallow coming from up here and it's quite fast when we're in a panic. But if we can start to think about breathing from lower down and breathing more deeply and more slowly, it will immediately start to calm some of our panic symptoms. So we're breathing in and we're breathing out. Breathing in and we're breathing out. And as we do this, the natural thing to happen after a while is that worries and thoughts come into our head. That's what happens. That's okay. We don't have to stop them. We just notice them and we carry on. I'm breathing in and I'm breathing out. I'm breathing in. And I notice perhaps that the time is ticking past. And I'm breathing out. So it's not I notice something, but I have to keep breathing. It's and, not but, it's and. I notice things, of course I do. And I'm breathing out. And I'm breathing. I don't have to solve them. I don't have to analyze them. I don't have to judge myself that they're there. I just notice them and I breathe in and I breathe out. If it helps, you can think about the sensation of the air coming in through your nose and out through your mouth. So just breathing will help you slow down and feel calmer. Now the next one, F, is F for focus, and this is about focusing well. I've borrowed this from a very good book which I read by Dr. Claire Weekes, and she talks about keeping our focus in the right place. Now, as counsellors, we like to look at emotions, we like to study them, we like to process them, we like to get them out and talk about them. Sometimes with anxiety, it's okay to not fully engage with all our emotions. Sometimes the task with anxiety is to keep our focus in a more useful place than on everything which is worrying us and the symptoms which make us feel bad. So the neurons that wire together, the ones that we use at the same time, they connect. And if we can make new connections, then we're going to feel less anxious. So Dr. Claire Weeks says, first of all, you have to face the anxiety, not run from it. So we're not in denial. We know that we're anxious. Then you have to accept it, not fight it. Now, generally, you will have been told, oh, you need to fight this, you need to do something about this, you need to... Actually, with anxiety, it's often better not to fight it. The next thing we do is float through the situations that we're in. So we're aware of the anxiety. It's there. We don't need to do anything about it. But we're going to carry on and just do what we needed to do anyway. And I'll give you an example. And then we let time pass because the feelings are still around the place. But we let time pass. We know they're there. It doesn't matter. We're not doing anything about them. We're not looking at them. We're just doing what we need to do. Now, I have alluded to my dislike of aeroplanes and flights. And so going on a flight is traumatic. I have been known to scream out loud in a plane when it's taken off, clutch the hands of strangers, scream as we land out loud, go to the toilet about 5 times in a 3-hour flight, or not quite, but you don't want to go on a flight with me. It's not fun. Poor husband. But I don't like going on flights, but I go on them when I have to. Not all that often, but sometimes I have to, and sometimes it wouldn't be fair on my husband or, in fact, me not to. So I do go on flights. I don't think I'm going to crash and die. I just feel very trapped. I don't like that trapped feeling, and it makes me really anxious. So I face that. I know I don't like flights, but I book the holiday anyway, or the trip anyway. I use my staying in the moment techniques. I don't have to go through that flight endless times. I only have to do it twice because I have to come back. So I don't have to go over and over it, getting anxious about it before I go. I stay in the present moment. I'm not on the flight now, so I don't have to go over it and experience all the anxiety. And when it comes to it, I do what I need to do, and I notice that my heart's beating faster. And I get in the car and go to the airport, and I notice that I'm feeling a bit shaky. And I get coffee and wait for the flight to be called. And I notice that my legs are feeling a bit wobbly and that my brain is trying to go into, I really don't want to do this mode. And I walk along to where the gate is and wait for it. So I can still go and do the things that I need to do. It's not an I can't. It takes a lot out of me. And the last long haul flight I went on, I had a complete meltdown in the middle. So I'm a work in progress. I was in tears. I had to be looked after by the stewards. I was in a mess. I really, 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 really don't like flights, but I do them and I get through them. And they take a lot more out of me than they might take out of somebody else. But I do them. I can say afterwards, I've done it. I can have been to those places that I want to go to. So it doesn't matter in one sense that it takes a lot out of me as I focus on what I need to do and float through and don't over concentrate on the anxiety and the symptoms. What I'm doing is I'm trying to cut that fear, adrenaline, fear cycle, because otherwise what happens is we make it worse. If you remember from the previous video, the lifetime of an emotion is about 90 seconds in our brain and our body. The rest is reinforcement by ourselves. So we feel the fear, we get the adrenaline rush around us. It gives us all the symptoms that makes us feel really bad. And then unless we cut the cycle, we then feel the symptoms and panic about the symptoms and think, I feel really awful, this is going to be awful, and make them worse, and more adrenaline and more fear and more adrenaline. So what we're trying to do is say, yes, those feelings are there. I'm going to notice them. I'm not going to fight them. I don't have to do anything about them. I'm just going to float through and do what I need to do. And they will be there for some time. That's okay. We don't need to keep looking at them to see if they've gone away. They will go as time passes, and we just do what we need to do. So we've talked about focusing well and wiring our neurons in a different way. We've talked about facing, accepting, floating, and letting time pass. Thank you, Dr. Claire Weeks. We have said that even counsellors don't have to fully engage with all their emotions all the time. And F is for focus. It's about not focusing too much on your anxiety. It's there, but you don't give it too much importance or too much attention. And it's going to calm down much more quickly. So you notice it, you move on. And you don't feel that you have to solve it or judge yourself for it. And that is how we keep our focus in a useful place. So there we go. We've only got 2 more to do, and I think they're quite short. I hope you've stuck with me for this, and I hope that it's been useful. Take care.